Hello to viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Computer Wednesday, we're going to talk about phase 2 of chip war. So let's dive deep into it. Now, what is this chip war? Basically, chip war is more or less exactly the same thing as we had with nukes in Cold War era. So basically, chip war has become the nuke war of Cold War era. And there is a bit more difference and bit of nuance here, because while nukes were super expensive, super complex and advanced mathematical technologies, they were not necessary. Meaning, if you are a country and who has a good economy, you do not need that. It's like it was an expenditure. It was not like, oh, it's a compulsory thing to have. However, chip is both of these things, meaning you can use it to boom your basically opponents, and it's important in your day-to-day life. Meaning, at this point in time, there are around 200 countries. Almost all of them, all the time, need chips. It's not an option, it's compulsory, and weapons technology does not work without it. So not only it's necessary for your civilian peacetime use, it's also important for weapons time boom boom use. So fundamentally, it's very important. It's more important than nukes. So this is a very serious dilemma, and the primary reason of this dilemma is because only few nations make it exactly how nukes are. There are only few nations who knows how to build nukes. The exact same thing happens with basically chips also. Only few nations have this. For example, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, USA, and China. These are the only nations that have it. And Taiwan is very important in this simply because while China does have some fabrication abilities, they are not known for making cutting edge, bleeding edge technologies. Meaning, if you want to touch 10 nanometer, you're gonna go more or less to basically some miniature fabs in South Korea and Japan. Or if you want to do true mass production, you have to go to Taiwan. That's it. That's factual reality. That creates a very serious issue. The whole world is running on these nations working properly. If any of these nations go lol or YOLO, we are all effed. Exactly like how we could have been in the Cold War era, if it ever became hot. So chip war is exactly the same thing. So why it became so hot, and as in like war? Well, reality is China is the primary reason why this is became as a war. The reason for that is like they take the design, they reverse engineer it. Now be mindful when I'm saying reverse engineering, it's possible. It was possible in like early 90s and 80s, and even 90s was kind. They were reaching the upper limits because modern silicon, like let's say modern silicon used in AI crunchings, like let's say NVIDIA A100, yeah, those you cannot reverse engineer. It will take you years to reverse engineer, and by that time NVIDIA will have something even better. So, but they did do this. They did directly reverse engineer designs, and then they did not respect the patents. You can reverse engineer everything because I can guarantee you Samsung has engineers who are looking into other things and reverse engineering it. But you have to respect patent, meaning reverse engineer for yourself, to learn yourself, not for like, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm control C, control V. At least don't do that. That's like, no, you don't do that. And what China did is like flooded the world with cheap copy, killing the source itself. For example, let's say Philips. Philips is a company. They have a R&D lab. They work their ass off to develop a new silicon that allows a new type of technology. Let's say a very advanced television. Now China looks at it, looks at the silicon, reverse engineers it, and now they just makes the damn thing. But because they do not have to pay the debt that they incurred during research and development phase, their prices are fundamentally lower. And I'm not even talking about like their cheap labor part. If you do not have to pay for research and development, the cost goes down drastically. Consequence, they can flood the market with cheaper and equivalent products, and consequence, the source, the people who built it, they will be out of business. And this has happened. USA was never so poor country where they were like, oh, I only have like 4 or 5 companies that actually make any silicon worth its salt, so to say, like Texas Instrument, Intel, AMD, Nvidia, Apple. But like they had a very long list. But what happened to that long list? China slowly chipped away at their basically bottom line and poofed them. So that created a very serious issue. However, till this point, it's a long-term issue. Nobody is really taking it seriously. Neither politician nor businessman. Scientists are, because they can understand mathematics, but other people are not taking it seriously. However, there was a growing pain, that was single point failure. Meaning, let's say your Taiwan makes your chips. Awesome, no problem. But here's the deal. What happens after Taiwan makes the chip? Chips have to be packaged. But here's the deal. Chip packaging is not the final thing. You have to package it into a PCB, package it into a container, and then ship it to the customer. China was one stop for that. And that was the biggest power China was yielding, meaning they had a single point failure. If China goes poof for whatever reason, the whole planet will grind down. Meaning, if China goes poof, basically car factories in USA will go down. That was, people knew it, but nobody had a real world experience of that. It's like, wait a minute, you are telling me that even though Taiwan is making the chips, if they do not give it to China and China does not package it quickly enough and do not deliver it to us, we cannot run factories in India, we cannot run factories in USA. What the hell? This happened. When did this happen? I'm pretty sure most of you know the gift from China, COVID-19, and it exposed the fragility of the whole system. This China as a world factory, people was like, this was the first time they got bitch slapped, and they got bitch slapped hard. Where it's like, oh, all the scientists who were calculating this and warning us about this, it happened. COVID-19 was like a very, very big, what you call, awakening, where people realized everything. They were like, we have weapons factories and everything is fine and all. It's like, wait a minute, you cannot make boom boom missile because chip is not coming from China. It's like, what the hell? This happened. And that's the one thing that people were like, whoa, this is serious. That's why it became a war. And not to mention, if you run this experiment for long enough, basically you do not poof this out of existence, in long term there won't be any research and development, because here's the deal. Nvidia cannot be cloned right now, but if China keeps working on it, keep trying to reverse engineer, sooner or later they will figure it out how to clone it. But how long after that Nvidia loses enough of a market share, enough of their bottom line goes down, where they're like, dude, I'm out because we cannot do research anymore. We cannot afford to pay that. They need to have profit, otherwise they cannot pay for the research and development, and the whole world comes to the grinding halt. It's exactly like how nobody could explain to Stalin, where it's like, if you keep poofing doctors, at the last moment of your life, you have to be treated by leeches because we won't have any doctors left. But he was like, let's poof the doctors. Yeah. It's like, let's poof the doctors. Same thing. They are literally terminating the golden goose, so to say. But COVID-19 actually exposed it all. Like, it's one of those things that you're ignoring, something bad happens, you're like, whoa, 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 I did not understood it was that bad. It happened in COVID-19. So this is when the war becomes the war. So we come to 2020. Now, world has realized it, because again, the Western Bloc completely got bitch slapped. And because Western Bloc was very, we have the technology, we have this, we have car industries, but like that bitch slap, where it's like, wait a minute, you are telling me car factories in Texas cannot work because China is not doing something. It's like, what the hell? So that bitch slap was hard. Now, thankfully, Western Bloc and Indian Bloc, they kind of realize something, that we have to do long-term planning. This cannot be changed overnight. This cannot be changed by a law. This has to be done systematically, brick by brick, day by day. Exactly how China became powerful, we have to depower it brick by brick, day by day. Long process. So some long-term plans were enacted. For example, India had a plan, Make in India, in 2014. Brick by brick, the scope of this project was increased brick by brick, day by day, little by little. And it's slowly going on. And during 2020, it became even more important. Then brick by brick, even more money were poured into it. So India, USA, European Union all allocated subsidies, because be mindful, America, EU and India, they do not want to force companies, where it's like, no, you have to do this. That's the Stalin logic. And if you do that, you go bankrupt and you go die. So to make sure that it's sustainable, subsidies were the tools that were utilized. Of course, some companies and countries were also using other tools. For example, countries had another tool of increasing taxes on imports goods, meaning if India is like, we are consuming a lot of mobile phones, like, we are consuming way too much mobile phones. So what if you make your mobile phone here, or at least just assemble it, just phase one of it, just assemble it here, we're going to give you a discount. But if you import it, we're going to have higher tariff on that. So that's a painful thing, but slowly, over time, it allowed India to slowly have a manufacturing assembly hub, at least. Basically, if instead of going from chips from Taiwan to China, chips can come from Taiwan to India, and then we can have complete packaging. So brick by brick, day by day, plans were put in place from 2020, and things were in motion. And Vietnam came as a new player in this. Now, why is that? Well, here's the deal. Can EU build everything that they consume? Absolutely. They have the technology. Then why don't they? Well, they don't have cheap labor part. And China got people addicted to very cheap products. That's the worst thing. Like in engineering, it's very well known that a good engineering tool is supposed to be expensive. It has to be expensive. It has to be heavy. But because again, China flooded the market with cheap tools, people forgot that original tools were always expensive. Quality tools were always expensive. Like you watch any machinist channel, they will tell you, they will orgasm over 1970s tool, which they keep refining it, keep refurbishing it, keep using it because it's so good. And yes, I'm not exaggerating, 1970s, like people were still shocked, like Bridgeports are still manufactured because they are that good. So China kind of warped our sense of cost. So instead of buying something or like you buy it and you forget it, we have buy it and then buy again. So EU and USA cannot actually do the whole thing. Even India, because again, our cost of living and standards are going up. So we may not want to do that sort of thing. So Vietnam is like, hey, our economy is growing, our population is growing, we are in the perfect spot where we can do this. So Vietnam will become the next world factory. And be mindful, textile industry, they're going all into it. And because of the love bite of COVID-19, the world have realized thou shall not have one point of failure. Meaning, even if textile industry, let's say from Nike and all other brands are going into Vietnam, they will never go only to Vietnam. They will have some in India, some in basically Bengal, West Bengal. I keep forgetting that, West Bengal. Basically, some in Bangladesh, sorry. Some in Bangladesh, some in India, some in Vietnam. They will always distribute it. So under no circumstances they will have one point of failure. They will have 3 throttle valves in case of failure, natural disaster or governmental change. They will have 2 throttle valves to control properly to make sure supply chain is never ever disrupted again. So that's the whole thing. And India will reduce its import over time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a slow brick by brick process. Heck, even nothing phone is assembled in India. Like for Indian audience, but you get the point. Brick by brick, day by day. This started in 2020. So early stage is almost fully done. 2023 is here and half of it's over. So Global Foundries, Intel, Samsung Foundries and TSMC and Texas Instrument, all of them are building physical mass production fabrication labs in USA itself. They are, rather than just like actually going to Taiwan and getting it done there, they are like, no, thou shall make the chips here itself. On top of that, that's just the USA part. Taiwan, South Korea and Japan, all 3 of them are increasing their numbers of fabs, their fab capacity, simply because that surge that choked the whole world due to chip shortage was a very bad thing. Like you may think, oh, they must have made profit. They made profit, but it's a really bad thing that you can be choked. Like you never want to be in that position where you can be choked. So all these 3 nations, they are going all in. They are increasing their fabs. In some cases, their fab counts are going from 20 to 70. They're going that high up. They are bringing more fabs online so they can be less dependent on China, even for lower grade nodes. For example, 150 millimeter nodes, 130 millimeter nodes, I'm saying 130 nanometer nodes that are used in stabilizer, washing machines, things of that nature. Low grade nodes, even those they are leaching away from China. It's like, no, sir, we good without you. They're slowly leaching it away. And more redundancy, that is a critical aspect. So even in short duration, it keeps China's prices in check, where China is like, we're going to increase the price. World is like, okay, increase the throttle valve here. And China is like, no, bro, relax. Price coming down. So that's what we are doing. And why does USA has the luxury of having this many daddy coming here? Well, be it Samsung, be it TSMC, why the heck they are coming there? Well, USA has the benefit of the biggest domestic demand. For example, while India does have the luxury of assembling Apple's iPhones and assembling all other phones, we do not have the luxury of actually making the silicon. And who is making the silicon? Apple is. Who's making the making as a design IP wise? Apple, Intel, Nvidia. These are the big daddies of silicon. Apple is very important for TSMC. So these big daddy systems, they are like, hey, where they are best from? USA. So USA is like, hey, they went to TSMC. Is like, bro, sup man, you sell most of your stuff to us. How about you just build a factory here? And like, you know what, it's not cost competitive. Yeah, we got you. But what if we give you subsidies? What if we give you a little bit of nudge? And wouldn't you like to be more redundant, resilient? Because be mindful, we have this sort of situation where one hard drive disk platter factory gets flooded, whole planet's hard drive prices goes up, and the price never came down. Yes, it must happen, and I'm reasonably sure most of you, if you are as old as I am, you must have known when this happened. So they're like, actually makes sense. If USA is the main consumer of it, why not just make factories there? Intel is making their fabs. TSMC is making it. This puppy is almost done. It should start trial production as early as September, I think. I mean, it will get delayed, but I'm reasonably sure in early 2024, they will say that it's built and what is the output of it. So now these things, basically Apple, Intel, Nvidia, these are chump change. These are basically what we call children playing around. But USA has another deep pocket, like horrifyingly how deep that pocket is. That is military industrial complex. Because of the war that happened in basically Russia going, I am Soviet Union, I want to die like Soviet Union. People realize that chips are idiotically important. And even though China is skirting the chip law, they're not doing it for free, so Russia is stuck. And not to mention, because more and more rules or restraints are being put on China itself, so chips that are going there is ancient. For example, a missile and a drone that was captured recently, yeah, the chips is from Texas Instrument, made in 1980s. So people realize that, like, the biggest money maker in terms of silicon, in terms of raw chips to dollars, that is military industrial complex. And these people are mad. They're like, dude, we do not care about anything else. Weapons, when it comes to boom boom, they are like, money goes brrr. Like, they do not care about us. So TSMC, from as a private owner company point of view, they're like, dude, shut up, move there. Like, flat out. If we can even wow a little bit, hey, just that our chips for old technology like HIMARS, they require some chips. How about you can make that? We will not willing to pay too much. How about, like, $500 per chip? Be mindful that chip would be manufactured as 10 rupees, $10 per piece. So TSMC is like, shut up, move there. Intel, shut up, move there. And be mindful, that's why Intel is also doing this thing where fabs is independent of x86. They can manufacture from other people's design also, which also allows RISC-V to spread its wing. So this is early stage. That's happening as of now. This is almost about to be deployed. This is a bit behind schedule, but it's almost coming, and both should be ready by 2024 mid. So what we can expect in the future? Well, world is hoping that Taiwan invasion that China is really want to do becomes basically ineffective, basically so costly that even CCP is like, hey, wait a minute, what do you mean I have to starve to death if I invade there? That kind of expensive and ineffective, meaning this is one good thing that world have realized indirectly because of Russia-Ukraine war, is that a seller is also bound to the purchaser. For example, if you're buying something, you will like, hey, I am so dependent, I'm buying from them. That's factually true. However, it also means you are the one controlling the money and they are the one dependent on you. And if you are an export-only economy, for example, like China, and if people just say, you know what, no thanks, you go poof. People have learned this. For example, during the sanctions, everybody's like, sanctions have failed, everything has failed because Russia is so powerful. It's like, these people, if they were alive in USSR days, they must have orgasmed a lot when Yuri Gagarin went up there. It's like, dude, relax. Economic tools take long time to deploy. The sting comes out very long time. Now, what happened afterwards? Panic buying happened. Ruble went up. Everybody's like, USA has failed, West has failed. And then people are like, relax, man, relax. There was this tiny country known as Germany. They did something impossible. They built a freaking LNG terminal in 10 months. How the heck that's even possible? But they built it. Now, what was the benefit? Benefit was they had the money, they built a terminal, and there was this small nation, you may have heard of it, Egypt. Egypt was like, I see you have money. How about gas? Give me money. It happened. And then it was like, oh, other nations are like, hey, USA was like, hey, LNG. Other nations, Venezuela was like, hey. Or other nations are like, hey. That's the whole point. If you have the money, you have more power than you realize. As long as you have redundancy. Meaning, if you have multiple sellers, you can be like, hey, how about we keep the price under control? So that's the whole point. Ineffective. That's what they want to make China ineffective. Where there's like, dude, you are important, you are mass producing, but here's the deal. We have throttle valves. If we increase those throttle valves, you by default will go down because you are far more dependent on the people who have money rather than your own internal economy. So this fundamentally allows over a time to remove China from the world stage. Not on day one, not on quickly. It's a slow process. It's like how you defang Russia. It's not day one. It's like, wait. Let the panic buying be over. Let India plays its role. What India does, India is like buys the crude oil, but it has to buy in very cheap to make it sense. So, but again, Russia is desperate enough to sell it. So sales volume remain the same, but their profit goes down. We get the oil, crude oil. We refine it. We have a lot of amazing refineries. We refine it, sell it to EU. We get the profit. Russia gets a little bit. So fundamentally, this is how, over time, you make sure the ruble value goes down. It's the same thing they are applying with China. Not on day one, but over years, over months, over a decade, it will slowly remove them from the world stage. And it also has the added knowledge to make a robust supply chain. Thou shall not have one point of failure, meaning thou shall always have multiple options, meaning India, whatever other nations may decide, Japan, South Korea, and other nations are also looking into it. So must have multiple redundancy supply chain, and even Apple have learned this lesson. Apple is like very poor company, so to say. They act like poor company, where there's like, no, we have to manufacture everything in China, everything in China. It's like because they are the cheapest. It's like, dude, you should always have some buffer, some redundancy. It's like now they are learning it the hard way after sanctions. Like, oh, that's why you always have it. Now they're like, okay, we are making some farms in Vietnam, we are making some in India, we are making some in China, we are making some in Taiwan. So we always have fail safe, where like if one goes poof, others can take care of it. And make sure innovation survives and thrives. This is the most critical aspect. You can go into Europe, look into their tool history. They used to make amazing tools, flat out. There was no discussion. They used to make amazing tools. Most of those companies disappeared. Why? Cheap Chinese tool. So, and all the designs that you see in the Chinese world is like half of them are literally can be traced into that. Other halves are just like minor improvements and all that. So innovations, for innovation to survive and thrive, it needs a patent system. It needs someone to play fair. It's like, how long can you watch a game that is rigged? Only a somewhat. It's funny and interesting, but after a while it gets boring. Same thing here. They have to make sure that innovators who are actually building it, who is going into the R&D, must get their money worth back. Otherwise, poof. So in long term, we all win. Now, what's the end game? End game is basically same way this guy is slowly being defined. Slowly, be mindful, it's a very slow process. Could take 5 years. They want to slowly, poof, this guy also. Exactly like this guy. I really feel like somebody must have cursed Lennon from his bottom of their heart. It's like, you Lennon, you must, poof. And it's like, you could not fake this. Like, can you imagine? It's like, yeah, I'm removing a statue of this supposed cultural figure, and it's like, it's gonna head, poof. But it did happen. So basically, world is trying to make CCP into USSR of 2030s. So China's fall should look exactly like USSR fall over time in 30s. Now be mindful, I'm a bit optimistic of 2030s. It could take a bit longer than that, but I am seeing gears in motion. I'm seeing people taking actions brick by brick, day by day. So it will happen. And not to mention, China is so good at poofing their own public, it's hilarious at this point in time. It's almost same as ironically hilarious as Stalin poofing doctors. It's like, doctors, what if I poof the doctors? Like, you will require leeches at the end of your life. That did happen, fact. So this is the whole point of the future. This is the phase 2. People are got the gut punch, sucker punch happened, and now they are slowly building themselves. This is phase 2. So this was my presentation on phase 2 of chip wars. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike. Press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free. And as always, thanks for watching.